And it's Monday, and it's after 9, so that means Kathy Holman, Prairie Wife in Heels, joins us. Good morning, Kathy.
Good morning.
So, as advertised, we are talking today about nature versus nurture. And we kind of came up with this idea. I think I was lamenting about, Nick, about some of our commenters. Seems like every time somebody puts up a crime story, we get people who comment, what's wrong with their parents? It's always the parents' fault. And I said, I don't think it's always the parents' fault, which started a conversation between Kathy and I about, what different sorts of influences kids have, which led to the topic for today. So,
nature versus
nature
nurture.
versus nurture.
I thought
so.
we settled this earlier. I mean, I said it's 100% of the time the parents' fault. No discussion, no question.
And I love that you are not yet a parent. And I know that is probably contributing to why you feel that way.
Well, no, he's just
I don't
talking from
actually
his
feel
own
that way, and also trying very hard not to be a parent.
He's talking from his own experience. But, I am interested, Nick, especially since you're a bit younger. I guess I didn't know that be.
Yeah.
So of a different generation. How's that? About, with your experiences, and I know that you've had some, and I was too, a bit of a wild child, a streak in there somewhere. So, is that your parents' fault if something goes wrong? I mean, if I get in trouble, is that my parents' fault? What kind of influences did you have?
So can I interrupt for a second? Can we
course.
define what nature is and what nurture is in case our listeners don't know?
Yeah,
and so
go
we're
ahead.
all on the same page. So when we say nature, we're referring to the genes. Hereditary factor, you are born this way. Personality characteristics, physical appearance, it's all in your genetic makeup, and that influences your behavior. That's nature. And nurture is referring to the environmental variables that impact who we are, early childhood experiences, that would be parenting, how we're raised, social relationships, and our surrounding culture. So that's what we mean. Is it your genes and just what you are inherently that makes you behave, or is it your environment? Your parents.
But
Okay.
we're also pulling it out a little bit more within that nurture of whether this nurture from your parents or nurture from other influences.
Yes, yes, definitely.
Right.
Peers are in there and siblings. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, we do this, Nick, just in case.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. I just wanted to make sure we were all on the same
This
page.
is good. This
So-
is good. I didn't know what nurture meant, so I'm glad that you explained that.
So what were your experiences, sir?
Well, broadly speaking, I mean, I would say that, like we talked a minute ago off air, Susan. It starts with the parents, obviously, in terms of nurture. That's how you socialize initially, and I think at a certain point, at least for me, that kind of transitions to I want to go out more and hang out with my friends, and I want to I'm on the football team, and we're in Boy Scouts, and so I think you spend more time, and I think when you become a teenager, you're less inclined to maybe spend time with your folks quite as much. Mom, stop that. Let me go do what
You
I
think?
want to do.
So,
and all this
so
stuff.
do you think, Nick, that there is anything to be said for the nature part, that people are predisposed to maybe be happy all the time, or predisposed to deal with frustration in an aggressive way? Do you think there's anything to that genetic part, or do you think it really is all how you're raised, how you're taught?
Yeah, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think science has shown that nature has a lot to do with mental illness, depression, that kind of thing. And so obviously there's a lot to do with nature in that sense, but I think nurture is the side of how do you deal with that, how do you cope with that, and move forward.
So in the case of, for example, what started this whole conversation, which would be people that are doing criminal acts, do you think that they are just predisposed to that, and then because of their home life, it just encourages them to make those poor choices or not have that self-control? Or, that's right. That's, as a parent, I'm sitting here looking at my kids, and my goal is to raise children that have good moral character and put positive in the world. That is my end game. Limited jail time. I'm not going to say no jail time because I do believe in that whole nature thing. And I can look at a couple of my kids and be like, all right, military is going to be good for you.
Yeah.
But, so what do we do? Like, how do you work with that?
I just want to point out real quick, I'm dying because we're asking the one person in this group that hasn't had any kids.
This is why I want to hear this, because it's
hysterical.
making me giggle.
But
But that's what I want your perspective, because I know my perspective as a parent, as an early childhood educator, where I spent
And then we'll cut you free, I promise.
Yeah, spent years. Technically, according to all the the main, I can't remember the phrase I'm trying to think, but in child development courses, your personality is pretty well formed by the time you're 6, barring any traumatic events. No pressure, parents.
Yeah. So,
and if that's true, then there's got to be a lot to be said for that whole nature part, right?
Well, I mean, sure, but also by the time you're 6, you've done a lot of socializing, and that's not just going and meeting kids at school, but I mean the process of socialization with your family, with your parents, and so I think that's probably the primary factor. Again, hashtag not a scientist. And to your question earlier about, I think the way you phrased it was criminal acts. I think first we have to talk about what kind of criminal acts. You know what I mean? Because I got a speeding ticket last November. Am I predisposed to getting a speeding ticket? Probably not.
Is it your parents' fault?
But I would be because I'm chronically late. Yeah, so.
And is that hereditary? I mean,
that is definitely hereditary. Sorry, Mom.
So I don't know. I mean, I think there are behaviors. And I think mental illness as a contributing factor would be something to look at. Some of that you could be predisposed to, but I would argue that a lot of that, and again, it's so hard to generalize because you talk about criminal acts. Well, what is that exactly? Because there's a whole spectrum from, speeding tickets, or like I got drunk at a football game and got kicked out, or
for the third time,
things that are far more severe. Well, speak for yourself there. And so I don't want to generalize, and I don't want to put everybody into one box where they might not belong.
Yep, I agree with that.
But at the same time, I think there is a pattern sometimes, and I see that daily. And just speaking from my own experience, I see the same names, not even necessarily the same people, but you'll see some of the same family names on a jail roster or on the docket over at district court. And without passing judgment, because it's not my place to do that, it seems to me like, you read these affidavits and you kind of get a feel of the situation for this person or for this person's family. And, in some cases, certainly not the majority, but in some cases it seems like, family life and the way that they interact and the things that they do together, it creates, I think, that predisposition from the nurture side.
I would agree with that. And actually what I thought was cool, which as soon as I started researching this, I was like, oh, this makes sense. But scientists actually use twins to do a lot of their research about this.
Yeah, and before we go into that, Kathy, I just want to say, I know Nick has other things to do because he's filling in with Roger today. So, Nick, thank you for your perspective. We'll cut you loose.
Thank you, Nick.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks. So, twins.
Yes, twins. So as I was reading, I was like, of course you would look at twins to see, because they would have close genetic makeup and the same environments. And then they looked at twins that had been separated, that had been adopted to different families, and took a look at that. And the statistic here is Nature Genetics reviewed almost every twin study done in the last 50 years, which that's a lot. And 49% of the variation for human traits was down to genetics, and the other 51% was due to environmental factors. So that's pretty much right down the middle.
Right.
50% of who you are is your genetics, and 50% of who you are is your environment that you grew up in, your nurture, based on twins and how they behaved and how they were raised.
And it really, to talk about what you all, had commented on too. Melanie said it completely depends. There are definitely some parenting factors that influence children. There's no way to isolate any one factor to know for sure. Nature, nurture, media, and peer influence. Let me repeat that. Peer influence, it all plays a role. In the end, we're all just parenting the best that we know how. And Carolyn expanded on that. You can parent perfectly, offer education, discipline, guidance, support, encouragement, experiences, and opportunities. But at some point, the younger human gets to make choices and decisions for themselves. Sometimes those reflect the values that the parents offered, and sometimes it does not. The harder question is, when do we as parents stop taking responsibility for our children's choices? And I think that's a very good. And I'm going to leave that sit on the table and let you think about that for a minute. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll be back with more with Prairie Wife and Heels, Kathy Holman. It is 9:32 at K2 Radio, and we're back with Kathy Holman, Prairie Wife and Heels, and we're talking about nature versus nurture as far as, kind of how you turn out, how your kids turn out. And we were talking about one of our friends, Carolyn, who commented and was talking about basically, and we had a lot of these comments, Kathy, of people who said you can be the most perfect parent in the world and give them guidance and give them, a good upbringing and a solid and send them to church and everything else, and still things can turn out wrong.
Yeah. Well, I think about it. Most of us can look at our family and we were all raised the same way, and guaranteed there's someone you would refer to as a black sheep. And if you can't think of it, it's probably you.
Yeah, there you go. And you were saying, you can look at different families whose kids were raised exactly the same way.
Yeah.
And they've turned out, they're all over the place.
I look at my own kids, and that's why this is so fascinating and kind of important to me, because I feel like if we have the key to this, we can figure out how to have all of our children be successful. And that's what I'm in the thick of right now. I've got a 12-year-old down to a 3-year-old. And I look at my own kids, and I kind of wasn't joking when I was like, there's one that is probably going to end up in the military or spend time. That's just his nature. That's just who he is. I have one that's probably destined for the priesthood because he's always been the straight and narrow, black and white rule follower, which then you can look at birth order too, right?
Right.
That has an impact as well. I really believe. What do you think of when you think oldest child, Susan? Like, what's your first thought?
The one you make all the mistakes on.
That's
what
true.
I think of.
That is true. That is true.
And that's how we explain it to our younger child.
What do you think of their personality, though? Usually, you think of the older one as the natural leader, responsible. That's usually in the birth order. That's how it is.
If you could see my facial expression.
You guys need to watch the video. And this isn't 100%, but generally understood, the first one is usually leader, responsible, bossy. And I love my sister.
Well, that would be my brother who was the first one, yes.
See? Okay, right? So looking at, and my sister, sorry, Anne, but my sister is exactly like that. She is the most driven person, natural leader. And then, of course, you have the middle child syndrome that they talk about all the time, which that's the social butterfly, peacekeeper, and fairness obsessed. How many kids do you have in your family? I know you have 2 sons, but you grew up two as well.
I have an older brother, yes.
An older brother. So the middle child, I look at my own, technically, I guess I have 3 middle children because I have 5 kids. But the one that is truly in the middle, that is totally what he is. He is just, I'm going to just flit around. I'm just going to do my thing. I'm just going to be who I am. And then you have the stereotypical youngest child, which would be spoiled, look at me, attention seeking, risk taker.
But it kind of depends on how many in the family, too,
you got it,
right?
You got it right there. So
because you're talking 5.
Yeah, well, where would you think I am in birth order, just knowing me?
Oh, geez. I'm
Say
afraid
it.
to even ask.
Say it.
Second.
I am the youngest.
You're the baby.
I'm the look at me.
Now that you say that, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
to me.
right. And I embrace it wholeheartedly. There's something to that. And my youngest, absolutely. She is like, woo, I'm amazing.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know that my youngest would fit that bill.
You don't think so?
I don't think my kids fit any bill.
How many years apart are your kids?
5.
5 years. So they say that if it's 5 years or more in between your kids, I did a lot of research on this. Regular listeners know.
I'll just listen.
Yeah. So if they say it's 5 years or more in between your kids, you're actually starting over. So you can wind up with a new, quote unquote, firstborn personality.
That makes a lot more sense now that you say that.
And so then your oldest would have a lot of the traits of the only child, which is that's pretty much the same as the firstborn. They say perfectionists, diligent, tend to be leaders, but they do say that if there's more than 5 years in between the kids, that you're starting over.
Oh.
Like, do you know what I mean?
Well, why didn't you tell me that
like
18 years ago? Or 20
well, if it makes
ago.
you feel any better, my kids are all just about 2 years apart, like to the day and to the month. They're almost all exactly 2 years apart. And they say that if there's that little of an age gap, it's just kind of a big muddled mess. Thank you, scientists. And I could definitely refer to my life as a big muddled mess.
We were sort of like, we had the first one and then we got busy and then we went, oh, were we going to have another one? Maybe we should get around to this. You think so? And we started, this could be a whole nother topic, but we started a little bit later in life.
Yeah, yep. But it is amazing. All these factors go into your children's personalities and their success, that nature versus nurture, the birth order, definitely, which I can see because my oldest son, I followed that poor kid around everywhere. His shoes had to match his bib, had to match his outfit. And my youngest one, I'm surprised we gave her a name. I mean, my parent, so that's going to go into her ability to be more carefree and to need to seek more attention because there's 4 other kids above her that are getting it from us that the other kids didn't have to deal with. And also, if you want to go into the whole sibling thing, your kids actually spend 1/3 of their time with their brothers and sisters. So you want to talk about influences on your personality.
And if you have a close family that's all, here in a village, then they're cousins as well.
Yes. And so they were saying, too, that generally if you're if you have lots of kids, that the more kids you have, the less they speak, they speak later and their verbal skills are less. And I was thinking about that and I didn't buy that. But then as I read further, it said that if you have older siblings that are cognitively sensitive, that means they spend time actively with their younger siblings. It's actually going to bring that score way up and you're going to have earlier talkers. So there's just all these things.
Yeah. So are we kind of in agreement with, some of our commenters and with each other that the nurture, the parenting is a huge influence. It's a huge influence, but it's not the only influence.
No,
and that
siblings, peers.
Yeah, and I don't have the stats right in front of me, but at some point, there's like a point where they quit listening to the parents and they're going to listen to their peers more. Which is why, the parenting skills of trying to,
based on what I've seen.
Yeah, trying to, keep track of who are you seeing, where are you going, when are you coming back?
But I think,
are their parents home? That's a big one.
And there's
are their parents home if you're going to go over there?
And there's that nature aspect. So if you have a kid that's predisposed via genetics to be pleasant and cheerful and handle the bumps of life with a smile and a good attitude, that's going to carry on forever. But if you have a child who's easily frustrated, whose first reaction is anger when something doesn't go their way, then that's going to determine who they hang out with, how they react to those situations with their siblings. And so that's why I think people say it's 50-50 nature versus nurture, because your nature is going to determine how you deal with those interactions with your peers, with your siblings, and it's going to propel you forward that way.
And how rebellious you are.
Yeah. And then also, too, there's something called, where's this big fancy word that I said I needed to say so I sounded smart? De-identification. Something called de-identification, where you do the exact opposite of what your siblings did just to be different. And that is me 100%. All my siblings took German, all 3 of them, and I took French on purpose as an active way to be different.
Well, and I will tell you, too, that, having with kids older in this process than yours are, that what we're starting to find is that and people with older children and adult children, the older they get, the smarter you become again.
Oh, amen.
Because you hit that point where, it's the eye rolls and you don't know anything and you just, but as they get older, they'll start coming back. And I know I did this with my own parents. I would call my mom and I'd say, I'm sorry.
I do that.
So sorry.
Oh my gosh. Amen. Amen. I do that too to my parents all the time.
So there's hope, but I've heard it said, and actually by officials like youth diversion officials, during part of their lives, what your job is to keep them alive. Keep them alive and keep them going.
Yeah.
And hopefully all of that which we tried to instill in them when they were younger will still be in there somewhere while they're going through the, trying to figure out who they are and what they want to do with their lives and the identification and, the hormones and the rebellion and all that kind of stuff.
We're just starting to get into all those joys.
To the other side.
We're just starting to get into that. And I was joking something about having kids that are so close in age, as I knew it was going to be chaos and lots of diapers and toddlers at the same time, but I didn't process the fact that we're gonna have like 4 teenagers at once.
Oh, Kathy.
Yeah, I didn't think that, and it's too late now.
Yeah.
It's too late now.
Kathy's in for it, ladies and gentlemen.
There's going to be some interesting radio programs as we go through the year.
Okay. We're going to take another quick break. We'll be right back.
The Wyoming Women's Expo at the Casper Event Center is Saturday, September 22nd. Back this year, the Magical Kingdom Kids area. Plus, there will be hands-on demos, health screenings, shopping, and spa services. Admission is just $6 for a whole day of fun. Find out more at WyomingWomen'sExpo.com. The Wyoming Women's Expo, presented by the Casper Star Tribune Communications, Casper Event Center, and Town Square Media, and sponsored by KCWY News Channel 13, Rejuvenate You, and Party America.
Stop getting turned down for car credit and call Wyoming Auto Group. If you have credit problems and you think you can't drive a great car, call 1-888-340-CARS. Tired of hearing no? We say yes. Your job is your credit. Call now and drive off in an inspection-certified quality late model vehicle from Wyoming Auto Group. Call today and get the answer you're looking for. Drive off to a fresh start with Wyoming Auto Group. Now located 1/2 mile further west at 3030 CY Avenue in Casper. Call now.
Guess who got a makeover? Casper Women's Care. They not only got a new logo, new signs, but also added new services. But they still have the same great staff and providers, including Dr. Carrie Merrill and nurse practitioner Catherine Munholland. Casper Women's Care is accepting new patients for both pregnancy and gynecological needs, and they submit to all insurances. Call to schedule your appointment today, 237-5510. That's 237-5510. Casper Women's Care at the corner of 2nd and Lincoln.
Attention everyone! You've probably seen or heard about the movie Limitless, where a powerful pill unleashes the full potential of the brain. It's fascinating that a pill could have such a dramatic impact on a person's life, fantasy or reality. Hi, I'm David Poorman, founder of Limitless, the closest thing to a legal smart pill available today. I was a struggling college student that nearly dropped out because I couldn't study or focus. Since then, these same issues have caused me to miss out on several promotions at work. I was determined to help myself, and after years of research, we finally did it. Just take Limitless within 30 minutes. You'll take your mind to a whole new level of focus and attention never thought possible. Call now and find out how to get a free bottle and experience this pill firsthand. My only regret is that we didn't create Limitless sooner.
To find out how to get your free bottle of Limitless, call 800-605-8947. That's 800-605-8947. Free bottle for a limited time. Call now. 800-605-8947. 800-605-8947.
We found the house we want. It's got these beautiful trees in the backyard. Now comes figuring out what program to use. If this were our first home, we'd look into WCDA financing options. My brother got his loan through them last year.
You mean Wyoming Community Development Authority? They're not just for first-time home buyers.
I thought it was.
Nope. In fact, their HFA and Advantage products don't require you to be a first-time home buyer.
What about their down payment assistance options? This nest egg leg up I keep hearing about.
The same. Call them. See how they can help. Some people say they want to see your dreams come true, but WCDA really seems to mean it. The dream of home ownership, they call it.
How do you know so much about this?
I pay attention to advertising.
To learn how, Wyoming Community Development Authority may be able to help you purchase a home, whether you're a first-time home buyer or not. Visit their new website at WyomingCDA.com or call 265-0603. Real people, real stories, real opportunities. WCDA.
It is 9:45 at K2 Radio. We're back with Kathy Holman, Prairie Wife in Heels. And let's see, how do we want to wrap this up? This is such a wide discussion.
I know, right? So I think what I want to say is this can be overwhelming, the nature versus nurture, siblings, peers. Oh my gosh, how are we going to produce children that are good? But I want to say, if you're aware of your child's nature, for example, I mentioned I have one son that's super quick to anger. Work with them and give them the tools when they're young to deal with that, to recognize about themselves, to know you need to walk away when you're upset and not react. And that's where the environment steps in, and you can help them as they're older to either work against or work with their nature to be the best that they can be. So it is not just hands in the air, I can't do anything.
And one thing we've been talking about throughout this whole conversation is that there are so many different influences
Yes.
out there in the environment. And, you know, our friend Barb said, we parent with the best of our abilities, and I hope we've given our children a good and solid base to make wise decisions.
Mm-hmm.
When they, as adults, don't, we have to live with their decisions and hopefully offer good advice. And again, what Carolyn said, the harder question is, when do we as parents stop taking responsibility for our children's choices?
Yep.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
That's a hard one.
It's a hard one even when your kids are little and they're pitching a fit in the middle of Target, you know? And so you just have to realize in the end, they are their own person. They're going to make their own decisions, and we did the best that we could do with the purest of intentions at the time.
Right. But I do want to circle back around, too, not to open it all wide open again, but to what Nick was talking about at the beginning of the conversation, too. Sometimes there are, I mean, we can say you're doing the best that you can, and our friends who commented are doing the best they can, and I'm doing the best I can, but there are families out there who are not, you know.
Yeah.
And those are the kids, too, that need... You know,
that's where hopefully an educator, a mentor, the Boys and Girls Club, and that's up to us as a community to recognize those children and those people that need help and be the one that is there, offers a suggestion, even if it's just that kid whose mom's always 15 minutes late to pick them up from football practice, offer them a ride home, have that 10 minutes with them, obviously making sure it's okay with the parents, but that's where as a community we can maybe step up and fill the gaps.
Right, and watch out for those kids
out
there too, because there are a lot of them. You know, my friend who takes care of the homeless students here in Nojona County, you wouldn't believe there are hundreds of them.
And it's amazing how one small act of kindness or care can have that same snowball effect and cause good.
Because nurture doesn't just have to be the parents.
It does not.
Okay, very good. Kathy Holman, Prairie Wife and Heels. Oh, we've done it again. Thank you so much. Be sure to tune in next Monday at 9:15, and Kathy will be back.
Thanks for having me.
You bet.